So today's topic is Ampere Circuit's law. I think you must have done parts before this. So we are going to start a law which is called as Ampere Circuit's law. Now listen to me clearly. Ampere Circuit's law. Beta, you must have studied about the Gauss law and Coulomb's law in a previous chapter, which was your which was your first chapter, and that chapter was electrostatics. And in that electrostatic, you have already studied about Coulomb's law and Gauss law. I'll just give you a recap of that. If you remember, by using Coulomb's law, you used to find the value of electric field, right? You used to find the force between the two charges, as well as you used to find the value of electric field due to a charge or due to a charge system. If you remember, if you have a charge, let's say the charge is Q, and if you're interested in finding the value of electric field due to this charge at a distance of r, so you use a formula which was equal to 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught Q by r square. Is it correct?
Yes.
And this formula that you used is nothing but Coulomb's law, is a form of Coulomb's law, obviously, right? At the same time, we can even calculate the electric field due to this charge using Gauss law. And according to the Gauss law, you must remember, according to the Gauss law, what do? We basically write the total flux is equal to charge enclosed by epsilon naught. What we do first, we enclose the charge in a surface and we call it as Gaussian surface, and we find the flux by using this formula, which is charge divided by epsilon naught. And we equate this charge by epsilon naught with E into A, and we get the value of electric field from this also, right? What I'm trying to say from this is that Coulomb's law and Gauss law are the alternative form of each other. Coulomb's law and Gauss law are alternative form of each other. I mean, if sometimes when Coulomb's law becomes difficult to apply, you apply Gauss law. And when Gauss law becomes difficult to apply, you apply Coulomb's law to find the same value of electric field, right? So these are two alternative form of each other. Did you understand what I'm saying? And why I'm saying this? Because the law that we are going to study today is also an alternative form of one of the law which you already have studied in this chapter. If you remember, you have started this chapter from Biot-Savart's law. You must have studied Biot-Savart's law, right? Okay, you know Biot-Savart's law. Biot-Savart's law gives you the value of magnetic field at a particular point due to a current carrying wire, if you remember, right? And how do we apply that Biot-Savart's law? So you know, well, okay, if I have to find the magnetic field at this point and this position vector at this point is r, so you know how to find the magnetic field, and that was the formula was mu naught upon 4 pi I dl sine theta upon r square. And this is the theta, right? And this is dl, that is the element of the wire in the direction of current. Means by using Biot-Savart's law, you found the value of magnetic field due to a wire or due to any arrangement of wires. Is it correct? Or due to a loop? In the same way, Ampere's law is also used to calculate the magnetic field. Means I can simply claim that Biot-Savart's law that you have already studied and the Ampere's law that we are going to study today are the alternative forms of each other. Did you understand what I'm saying? The way Coulomb's law and Gauss law was alternative form of each other, similarly Biot-Savart's law and Ampere's law are also alternative form of each other. By using both, you can find the value of magnetic field. Where Ampere's law makes question easy, both the laws basically is used to find the value of magnetic field at a point. The way we used Coulomb's law and Gauss law to find the electric field, and they were alternative form of each other. Similarly, Ampere's law and Biot-Savart's law are also alternative form of each other. Now, what is this Ampere's law and how do we apply it? So listen to me very carefully. Ampere's law simply says that if you have a wire, I will be first writing it for a single wire, then I will use more than one wire. Okay, just to make you understand. So I'm taking the simplest case. I'm having a one current carrying wire. You can call it as a conductor also. We have one current carrying wire. It can be either infinite or it can be finite. So let us say we have a current carrying wire and we want to find out the magnetic field due to this current carrying wire. And let's say this is infinitely long wire, right? We want to find out the magnetic field due to this current carrying wire at a point which is at a distance of r from this wire. Did you understand? So simply, how do we apply Ampere's Circuitor's law? Circuitor's law simply says that draw a loop. Listen to me carefully. Draw a loop around this wire or wire system. First step is what? You have to take a loop around the given wire. Okay? It is same as that of saying in the case of Gauss law, you used to take a Gaussian surface. For example, if you have a charge, you used to enclose this charge in a closed surface, which was called as Gaussian surface, right? Similarly, here what you have to use, you have to take a loop. Okay, you have to take a closed loop in which you will enclose this wire. Again, I'm repeating the same. First of all, you have to take a loop in which you will enclose this wire. So take a loop, and that loop can have any shape. Listen to me carefully. See, it is same as saying Gaussian surface. Gaussian surface can have any shape. Similarly, Amperian loop can have any shape. The requirement is that you have to first take the Amperian loop to enclose the wire. Amperian loop can be of any shape, right? So let me say that I am taking a loop like this. I am taking a loop like this. Did you understand? This loop I have taken around this wire to enclose the wire. I'm not taking a surface. I'm enclosing or I'm taking a loop around the wire, right? Obviously, there will be magnetic field on this loop. Tell me yes or no. If you have a current carrying wire, obviously there will be some magnetic field around the wire, and that magnetic field will have some direction. You
Yes.
must have studied this, right? Infinitely long wire. If you have a wire, the magnetic field due to this wire always forms a closed loops, if you remember. And the direction of that magnetic field can be either clockwise or anti-clockwise, depending on the direction of current in the wire, right? So if you have
Yes.
magnetic field around a wire, so it will have a particular direction. It can either be clockwise or it can be anti-clockwise. For instance, see, I have taken the direction of current upwards, so the direction of magnetic field will obviously be anti-clockwise, right? So how do we apply Ampere's law now? Try to understand. We have taken first, we have taken the loop. We have assumed a direction for magnetic field. Now what we do? We take a small element of the loop, we take a small element of the loop in the tangential direction. What we do? We take a tangential element. What we do? Again, I'm repeating. What we do? We take a tangential element. Means an element of the loop taken in the direction of current. Sir, why did you take tangential element? Try to understand. If you have a circle or if you have a curve, so the direction of any quantity on that circle or curve will always be tangential. You must have studied about this earlier also. For example, if you take electric field lines, you must have studied that at any point, if you want to check the direction of electric field, you draw a tangent to that point, and the tangent drawn to that point gives you the direction of electric field at that point. It is not only for that electric field. Remember the fact that whenever you have a curve, if you have a circle, so to check the direction, you always draw the tangent to that point. Did you understand? You always draw tangent to that point to get the direction, right? So similarly, what we have done, we have taken a small element of the loop in the tangential direction, and the magnetic field at this point, at this small point, will also be tangential. So B and DL both will be tangential. So you have taken the tangential element. Now, Ampere's law simply says that the integration of this magnetic field. Now listen to this. The integration of this magnetic field with respect to this DL means integration of this B dot DL. Integration of BDL. Integration of BDL will always be equal to mu naught times the current passing or flowing through the loop. Again, listen to me. The it is also called as line integral. So line integral, why it is called as line integral? Because you are integrating magnetic field with respect to length. That is why it is also called as line integral. Line integral of magnetic field over this whole closed loop. If I integrate this over the whole closed loop, this circle represents that you are taking the integral over the whole loop. It is representing that you are integrating this over a closed loop, right? This circle indicates that you are integrating this quantity over the whole closed loop. So the line integral of magnetic field over the whole closed loop will always be equal to mu naught times the current flowing through this loop. This is known as Ampere-Circuital's law. This is known as Ampere-Circuital's law. I will make you understand how it should be applied in a given question, but try to understand the line integral of magnetic field is equal to mu naught I. If you can reconnect, if you can please connect it to what you have studied in Gauss law. So in Gauss law, it was EdA is equal to Q enclosed upon epsilon naught. If you remember, it was a Gauss law, right? You used to equate EdA, that is flux, is equal to Q enclosed upon epsilon naught. Here you had the integration of electric field over the closed surface. So it was called as surface integral. It was called as surface integral. And surface integral was equal to what? The charge that was inside the surface divided by epsilon naught. Here what we are doing, we are integrating magnetic field over the length of this loop, and that will always be equal to mu naught multiplied by I. Right? So this is Ampere-Circuital's law, and this is how we will apply Ampere-Circuital's law. So I will repeat everything again. Listen to me carefully, then I'll dictate and you will write the statement of this law. But listen to me first. Ampere's law simply says if you have a wire or you have arrangement of wires or loops, then the first step is to draw a loop enclosing that wire and take the line integral of magnetic field over the loop. That line integral of magnetic field will always be equal to mu naught multiplied by current flowing through that loop. Clear? So I'm dictating the statement of this law. Please write the statement and then we'll proceed. Right? So please write the statement first. This law states that the line integral of magnetic field, this law states that the line integral of magnetic field around any closed circuit, line integral of magnetic field around any closed circuit, line integral of magnetic field around any closed circuit, line integral of magnetic field around any closed circuit is equal to mu naught times total current passing through mu naught times the total current passing through this closed circuit, passing through this closed circuit. Should I dictate it again? Did you write the law? Take a proof. What is the proof of this law? So listen to me carefully. We have this infinitely long wire, and it carries a current I, and I am interested in finding the magnetic field at a distance of r. So if you remember, you must have derived the formula for the magnetic field due to infinitely long wire using Biot-Savart's law. Do you remember that formula? What is the formula for magnetic field due to infinitely long wire at a distance of r? You must have derived this in this chapter using Biot-Savart's law. You must have derived this. Can you please tell me what is the formula for magnetic field due to an infinitely long wire at a distance of r? If you don't
Mu 0 I by
remember,
2 pi r.
yes, you are right. Absolutely correct. Mu 0, which I call it as mu naught. You can even call it as mu 0. It's your choice. Anyways, so the magnetic field at this point will be equal to what? So the magnetic field at this point will be equal to mu naught I divided by 2 pi r. It's absolutely correct. Mu naught I divided by 2 pi r. Now, what we are supposed to do, we are supposed to prove this law. So what I'll do first, I'll take a loop. But a loop can have any shape. But around a infinitely long wire, I'll be taking the loop of circular shape. Sir, why will you take loop of circular shape? Because you just told me that loop of any shape can be taken around the wire. Then why are you taking a circular loop? I am telling you the reason. As you have seen this mathematical statement of this law, it was BDL, means you have to integrate the magnetic field with respect to the length, right? DL is variable. DL is obviously variable because DL was what? DL was a small portion of this loop. So DL is variable. So DL is varying. If magnetic field becomes variable, so I'll be having two variables in the same integration. I will be having two variables in the same integration, and it is impossible for us now. Now it is impossible for us to find the integral in which we have two variable quantities. Did you understand? We can find the integral of one variable, but we cannot find the integral of two different variable quantities unless we know the relation between them. First, try to understand first what I'm saying. You must have seen the integration of y dy. You must have seen the integration of x dx, but you may not have seen the integration of y dx. Have you seen this kind of integration? If you are integrating a quantity, it should be integrated with respect to the same quantity. And if you don't have the same quantity, so you cannot integrate unless you know the relation between these two quantities. Now, try to understand why I'm saying this. My aim is not to teach you mathematics. My aim is to teach you physics. So I'll come to that part. Why did I tell you this? Because if magnetic field also becomes variable, so it will not be possible for us to integrate this BDL. So for this purpose, what we want to keep this magnetic field constant. Try to understand. What we want to keep magnetic field constant. And to keep the magnetic field constant, we take a loop of a particular shape at which or at every point of which magnetic field can be taken constant. For example, if I take an infinitely long wire, can you please tell me, if I take an infinitely long wire and if I draw a circle around it, can you please tell me what will be the values of magnetic field at every point? Will it be same or it will be different? Can you tell me? If I take a circular loop around a wire, magnetic field on that loop will be same or different, beta? Obviously same. Yes, very good, Fatima. Obviously it would be same. And because it is same, I can treat this magnetic field as constant. And if this magnetic field becomes constant, I will take it out and I will only integrate DL, right? That is why we take a particular shape on which or at every point of which we can treat magnetic field constant and we can integrate this quantity. That is why you will see that wherever you have a straight wire, loop will be having a particular shape and the shape of the loop would be circular. Although Ampere's law is applicable to any shaped loop, but due to our mathematical restrictions, we will be taking such a loop at every point of which magnetic field remains constant. Now, did you understand why do we take circular loop around a wire? Good, Afroza. Very good. So if I take a circular loop, now what I was supposed to do, I will take a element, right? Take a tangential element, and let's say I'm taking the magnetic field in the anti-clockwise direction. So if I take the magnetic field at this point, it will also be tangential. So what will be the angle between B and DL? Because both have the same direction. So the angle between B and DL, angle between B and DL, obviously beta, is 0 degree. And once we have got this angle and everything, now we can use the statement of Ampere's law and we can see whether we get the result or not. So what we'll do, we'll integrate B dl and we'll check what we get from this. So what we'll do, B dl is equal to the value of magnetic field is mu naught I divided by 2 pi r integration of dl. Okay. Mu naught I by 2 pi r, this whole quantity is constant because I told you magnetic field is constant, and that is why we have taken a circular loop. Now, what we are supposed to do, we have to integrate dl. Tell me, what will be the integration of dl here? If you integrate this dl over this closed loop, which is a circle, so what will be the integration of dl? Who will tell me? If I have a circle, very good, very good. If I have a, very good. So this will be simply 2 pi r, and because we have this 2 pi r and this 2 pi r, they cancels out. And finally, what we achieve is the Ampere circuitor's law. That means we can simply write B dl is equal to mu naught times of I. And I remind you, okay, here the angle is 0. That is why we are writing B dl. If the angle would not have been 0, so we would have been writing this as B dl cos theta is equal to mu naught I. Here the value of theta is 0 and cos 0 become 1. That is why we are writing this as B dl is equal to mu naught I. I'm erasing this, moving on. Achha, I would like to tell you one thing. In these cases, when I took an example and when I proved this law, I took only one wire. If you have more than one wire, for example, let us say I am having two wires, two infinitely long wires. And why I'm talking only about infinitely long wire? Because this is the part of your syllabus. And let's say I have I1 as well as I have I2. These are two wires. And in both the wires, we have current flowing in the upward direction. And the current value of current, this is I1, and this wire carries a current of I2. Both are infinitely long wire. If we apply Ampere's law, again, we will be doing the same. We will be taking some sort of loop here, and we will be taking the line integral of magnetic field. So my focus is that, okay, what will be the value of current in this case? So see, if you have taken this line integral of magnetic field B dl, because both the wires carries current in the same direction, if you take a particular direction for magnetic field, let's say I took magnetic field anti-clockwise, and the current in both the wires is same, or the direction is same. So obviously we can say that if magnetic field due to I1 is anti-clockwise, so due to I2 also it will be anti-clockwise, right? And hence I will write it as mu naught multiplied by I1 plus of I2. Try to understand. If the wire carries current in the same direction, then you will write the net current as I1 plus of I2 plus I3 and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, if you have two wires, both are infinitely long wires. If you have two wires, let's say one carries a current of I1, another one carries a current of I2. Now what will you do? Obviously currents are in the opposite direction. So it is very obvious that we will have to subtract the two currents. But which of the current will be taken as positive and which of the current will be taken as negative is a point. Try to understand, because current doesn't have, there is no meaning to negative current. So you cannot tell me that this is in the positive direction, so it will be taken as positive, and this is in the negative direction, so it should be taken as negative. No, because current doesn't have any sign to it. Current has direction, but there is no meaning of negative current, right? So how do we take which of the current should be taken as positive and which of the current should be taken as negative in this case? So listen to me carefully. I will do what? I will take a loop and I will consider a particular direction of magnetic field, right? Afroza, which direction you want the magnetic field to be? Anti-clockwise or clockwise? Sir, clock. Okay. If I take the clockwise direction, you remember, if you can recollect, try to memorize. If you take an clockwise direction, so you get clockwise direction for the magnetic field when the current flows downwards, right? Clockwise direction of magnetic field is when the current flows downwards, and anti-clockwise is the direction of magnetic field when current flows upwards. Means in this case, what you are doing, you are taking the direction of magnetic field clockwise. Means you are going in the direction of magnetic field, which is because of I2. You didn't get my point. Listen to me again. You are taking the direction of magnetic field to be clockwise. Means you are assuming this I to be dominant over I1, because the direction of magnetic field due to this current carrying wire I2 would be clockwise, and due to this current carrying wire would be anti-clockwise. but you are taking the net magnetic field to be clockwise. This means that you are considering the magnetic field of I2 be dominant over I1. This means that when you will be writing this BDL, you will write this as mu naught I2 minus of I1, right? Because you have considered this magnetic field of I2 to be dominant over I1. That is why you will be doing this I2 minus of I1. If you would have taken this direction to be anti-clockwise instead of taking clockwise, if you would have taken this direction to be anti-clockwise, so what you would have done in that case, then you would have taken I1 to be positive, I1 to be positive, and I2 to be negative. It would have become I1 minus of I2. Good, good, Afroza, right? So this is how you will write the net current. This is how you will write the net current. Now we will start solving few examples where you will understand how to apply Ampere's law. So I am going to take examples and listen to me carefully. I am taking the first example, very simple example, nothing great in it. The simple example or simplest example you can say, and this is like this. We have a wire which carries a current of 10 ampere, and you are supposed to find the value of magnetic field at a distance of 20 centimeter using Ampere's law. I don't want you to use the formula directly. I want you to use Ampere's law. Go by the Ampere's law. How will you find that magnetic field? Magnetic field B is equal to what, right? Use Ampere's law. Okay, what will you do? You will first take a loop, and because we have a single wire, the loop would be circular. Loop would be circular of radius 20 centimeter, of course. What we will write BDL is equal to mu naught times of current. What we'll do from here then, B is constant because we are talking about the circular loop. So at every point of the circular loop, magnetic field would be constant. So I can treat this magnetic field as constant. I will be doing this DL is equal to mu naught I. B will become equal to mu naught I divided by integration of DL, and you have already studied this as 2 pi r, right? This is how we apply, right? So what will be the values now? Mu naught can be written as 4 pi into 10 to the power minus 7, the value of mu naught. Current is how much? 10 divided by 2 pi multiplied by R. What will you write the R as? Obviously, R would be nothing, but R is what? So R is 20 centimeter. That is, it will be written as 20 into 10 to the power minus 2. Okay, moving on. Now I'm taking one example which is given in NCERT, and most of the book has copied this question from NCERT, and it is one of the good question that is given in NCERT. So that question we will be taking now, right? The next example that we are going to deal with is from NCERT. Try to understand the question first. We have this cylindrical infinitely long wire. This wire is of cylindrical shape and it is infinitely long wire. This wire is of cylindrical shape having a radius of r and it is infinitely long. It is infinitely long. Total current that is flowing through the whole wire, the total current flowing through the whole wire is I. I will dictate the question, but try to understand the question first. This is a cylindrical infinitely long wire whose radius is capital R, and the total current flowing through the whole wire is I. Now what has been asked is find magnetic field, find magnetic field at, where you have to find the magnetic field. So you have to find the magnetic field at first point, a small r greater than capital R, means outside the wire. Second point, a small r equal to capital R. And third point, a small r less than capital R, means you have to find the magnetic field outside the wire, at the surface of the wire, and inside the wire, and also draw the graph of magnetic field versus a small r. Now question arises, sir, what is this r here? This r is a general distance from the center of the wire. If you take this as the center of the wire or axis of the wire, so this r is representing any general distance. For example, if a small r is greater than r, this means that you are at a point whose distance is a small r, and this distance is greater than that of this capital R. So a small r, I'm writing this here, a small r is any general distance, any general distance. It is any general distance from axis or center, whatever you call axis of wire. It is a cylindrical wire, right? And remember, this is a cylindrical wire. Note down this question, we will discuss it. Cylindrical wire. First, we have to find out the magnetic field at a point which is outside the wire. What will be the first step to use? I mean, if I draw, I have drawn this wire this way, right? If I draw wire like this, if I draw wire, if I show you this vertical diagram of this wire, so this is infinitely long cylindrical wire, right? This is infinitely long cylindrical wire. This is infinitely long cylindrical wire. And this is the axis of the wire. This is the axis of the wire. The first point where you have to find out the magnetic field is at a distance of a small r, which is greater than that of capital R, where capital R is what? Radius of the wire. Can you understand this diagram? So what step is the first that you are supposed to use? We have to apply Ampere-Circuital's law here. And to apply the Ampere-Circuital's law, what we are going to do first? We will be taking a loop. And what would be the shape of that loop? So will it be circular or not? Please respond. Okay. So first, okay, good. So first of all, we have taken a circular loop. Now, what we are supposed to do? We just have to apply the Ampere-Circuital's law for this loop. So what is this Ampere-Circuital's law? It would be written as BdL is equal to mu naught I. And because we have taken circular loop, at every point of this circular loop, magnetic field will be constant. That is why we have taken circular loop. So we can treat this magnetic field as constant, and we will integrate this dl, and it will equate it to mu naught I. So we can write it as B integration of dl. You can understand it. It would be 2 pi r, right? Because if you take any small element and you integrate it, you get the total circumference of this circular loop, and which is nothing but 2 pi r is equal to mu naught I, means B is equal to mu naught I divided by 2 pi r. This is the formula for the magnetic field outside the wire. Now, the second case is we have to find the same at the surface. You can do it in two ways, right? Simply saying, if a small r becomes equal to capital R, what can you do? You can just put a small r is equal to capital R. That's it. In this formula, we can replace this small r by capital R, because in the second case, when a small r becomes equal to capital R, let me write it here. When a small r becomes equal to capital R, means if you'll take Amperian loop here, Amperian loop or the loop, it would be like this, right? It will have the radius exactly equal to this capital R. Because in this case, when you are at the surface, the Amperian loop that you have taken to enclose the wire will have radius small r, which will be exactly equal to capital R. And if you apply the whole formula, you will be getting the same result. Just there will be a difference. A small r will be replaced by capital R. Or in other words, we can simply say, whatever formula we have got for the magnetic field outside the wire, I can simply replace a small r by capital R in that formula, and I'll get the magnetic field at the surface of the wire. Means what I'll get a magnetic field as mu naught I divided by 2 pi r if I'm talking about the surface. Now, moving on, moving to the third part. Listen to me carefully now. This third part needs your concentration. See, this is your cylindrical wire, and it is infinitely long cylindrical wire, no doubt about it. The radius of this cylindrical wire is capital R. And the third case simply asks you to find the magnetic field at a point which is at a distance of a small r, and this small r is less than capital R. Try to understand. Means in this case, you have a point inside the wire at a distance of a small r, and this small r is less than capital R. Means you are inside this cylindrical wire. Try to understand. The steps will be same, but tell me one thing. If the whole current which was passing through this cylindrical wire was I, this means that from the wire of radius of capital R, the total current was passing, which was equal to I. If I take the small portion inside this wire, the current passing through this small portion will still be I, or it will be something different. I am saying that water is flowing through this pipe. Let me let me tell you in this way. Water is flowing through this pipe, and the water flowing through the whole pipe has a volume of 10 centimeter cube. When the water flows through the whole pipe, it is 10 centimeter cube. 10 centimeter cube of volume of water is flowing through the whole pipe. If I take the small portion of this pipe, if I take the small portion of this pipe, will the water flowing will have the same volume, or it will have different volume which is flowing through this small pipe? Obviously, it will have different value, right? In the same way, yes, different. In the same way, current flowing through the whole cylindrical wire is I. Means the electrons which are flowing to constitute this current I is flowing through the whole of this wire, and it is forming a current of I. But if I take a small portion, obviously the electrons flowing through this a small portion would obviously be less. Means the current flowing through this a small portion will be less than that of the whole current, right? So in the third case, you just have to keep this in your mind, because when you are inside the wire, the current flowing through that a small portion will not be same as that what is flowing through the whole wire. Means if I take the Amperian loop, this Amperian loop, the current flowing through this Amperian loop will not be I now, it will be something, let's say I dash. So I will first find this value of I dash, and then I'll solve the whole problem, right? Now, to find this I dash, try to understand what I'm trying to write. When you take the cross-sectional area, which is pi r square, this is the whole cylinder which is having a cross-sectional area of pi r square. The total current passing through pi r square is I. Pi r square carries a current I. So what will be the current in unit area? I am applying unitary method. So current through unit area, try to understand. Current through unit area. Don't you think it would be I upon pi r square? Tell me yes or no. In pi r square, in this area, the total current flowing is I. So what will be the current through unit area? Obviously, it would be total current divided by total area. So what would be the current through pi r square? Try to understand. Current through pi into a small r square will be equal to what? The current through unit area multiplied by this area. And this current I'm calling it as I dash. So I dash would be equal to pi cancels out. This will become simply IR square upon capital R square. This is the current flowing through this small Amperian loop, which is taken inside this wire. So now what we are going to do is apply Ampere's law. We will write it as BDL is equal to mu naught times of I dash. Okay, Joanna. What I tried to tell you is the current through the whole pi r square area. Pi r square area contains a total current of I. Means a total current of I is flowing through pi r square. So what will be the current in unit area? Unitary method. This is same of saying like if I ask you 20 chocolates cost rupees 40. 20 chocolates cost rupees 40. So what would be the cost of one chocolate? So how do you calculate that? You just divide the total cost by you just divide the total cost by total pieces of chocolate, right? That is what you do, if I'm not wrong. And this is called as unitary method. So in the whole area of pi r square, we have current I. So in unit area, what would be the current? So I will divide the total current through total area. I will get the current in unit area now. Means if you take unit area, means in 1 meter square or in 1 centimeter square, what would be the current? This will be the current. So if I am interested to find the area in say, this is the current in 1 meter square, right? This is the current in 1 meter square. If I have to find the current in 20 meter square, what would I do? I will multiply this current of 1 meter square by 20 meter square. Is it correct? Similarly, here we have this area through which I want the value of current. What is the current flowing through this a small portion, which is Amperian loop, that I am trying to find out. So here the current that I want is from the area pi into a small r square, which is the area of the Amperian loop. So what I'll do, I'll just multiply this area by the current through unit area. Is it clear, Joanna? Did you understand this? Sure? Okay. So this is the current that we will get from this Amperian loop. Now what we are supposed to apply, is the Ampere equation or Ampere's law, and we will write this as B into dl. dl, if you integrate this dl again, you will get this circumference, and this circumference is still 2 pi r is equal to mu naught into I dash. The current would be written as I into a small r square upon capital R square. If you solve it, you will be getting this as a small r gets cancelled out by a small r, and this will become equal to mu naught I multiplied by a small r divided by 2 pi capital R squared. This is the value of magnetic field which you will get inside this cylindrical wire. So we have already calculated the magnetic field at three different points of this wire. One was outside the wire, another one was at the surface of the wire, and the third one was inside the wire. So we have got the magnetic field at three different points. Okay, so moving on to the second part of the question, which was a graph of this magnetic field with R. Okay, Juan, try to understand the graph. See, the magnetic field inside, at a distance of a small r, you just write this magnetic field as, what was the magnetic field that you just wrote? The magnetic field was mu naught I r divided by 2 pi r square. Is it correct? So magnetic field inside is mu naught I into r divided by 2 pi r squared. This is the magnetic field inside the cylindrical wire. Means if in the cylindrical wire, if you are at the axis of the wire, axis of wire, can you tell me, at axis of wire or center of the wire, at axis of wire, or you can call it as center of the wire, don't you think a small r will become 0? Because a small r is being measured from the center, right? A small r is being measured from the center. So at center, this small r will become 0. This means that magnetic field center will obviously become equal to 0. Now, as you go away from this center, this magnetic field starts increasing because it is directly proportional to a small r. From the center till the surface, from center till surface, magnetic field is directly proportional to a small r, because you can see the formula, right? After the surface means outside the wire. What is the magnetic field outside the wire? Outside magnetic field, the formula is mu naught I divided by 2 pi small r. Means outside the wire, magnetic field is inversely proportional to this small r. This means that when you go from center till the surface, magnetic field will increase, and it will increase linearly. Means graph will be a straight line starting from 0. And when you go outside the wire, the magnetic field will start decreasing. Outside the wire, magnetic field decreases. Inside the wire, magnetic field increases. Outside the wire, you have this relation, inversely related quantity, and inside the wire, you have directly related quantities, right? So if you draw the graph will look like this. Magnetic field at the center will be 0. Then it will start increasing, and it will increase till you reaches the surface. And after the surface, it will start decreasing. This will become inversely proportional. This is directly proportional to R. This is inversely proportional to R. This is the value of magnetic field with R. Now we are going to study about one very important application of Ampere's law. And this application is basically the part of another structure which is called a solenoid. So what we are going to discuss now is solenoid, and this solenoid is based on Ampere-Circuitor's law. Means so it is one of the best application of Ampere-Circuitor's law, which is solenoid, right? So first of all, for that purpose, we need to understand what is solenoid and why are we going to study solenoid, why do we need solenoid, and all those stuffs. And then we'll drive the formula related to the solenoid and all those things. But before that, we need to understand what is called a solenoid. So let us understand solenoid first. What is solenoid and why do we use this? And what is the application of this solenoid? Let us understand that first. See, what is this solenoid? Solenoid is basically a name of arrangement. Solenoid is basically an arrangement. And what is that arrangement? If you take a copper wire and you make it helical, Okay, a copper wire which is wound in helical shape is generally known as solenoid. A copper wire wound in helical shape is known as solenoid, right? And these are different turns in the solenoid, and these turns in practical life, if you'll see solenoid, these turns are very close to each other. These turns are very close to each other, but as I'm drawing this on the screen, I'm not showing you very close turns, but remember, in fact, these turns would be very close, right? You can simply assume that okay, all the turns are stick with one another. This is so close that they appear to be sticked to one another, right? So this is very close turns. So what is solenoid? Solenoid is an arrangement of a copper wire in which you wound a copper wire in helical shape, right? A solenoid is copper wire wound in helical shape. Solenoid is a copper wire wound in helical shape. This arrangement will be called as solenoid. Now, why do we use this solenoid? First, understand this. We use this solenoid in to form electromagnets or temporary magnets. You must have heard that okay, we can form temporary magnets by passing the current. For example, if you take an iron and if you want to make it a temporary magnet, so what we do, we basically place this iron in the core of the solenoid, and when we pass the current through the solenoid, this iron gets magnetized and it remains magnetized till the current is passing through the solenoid. Once the current is switched off, this gets demagnetized. Means to make a temporary magnet, we use solenoid. Solenoid can be used to make temporary magnets. Did you understand? That is why we are going to study about the solenoid, because solenoid have magnetic field. Means whenever you pass current through the solenoid, solenoid has magnetic field which lasts till the current is passing through the solenoid. Did you understand? In the solenoid, you will be having a magnetic field till you pass the current through the wires of the solenoid. Now try to understand. Now we will be having two types of solenoid, but what is in our syllabus, I'll let you know. But before that, you need to understand the two types of solenoid. One is called as long solenoid, another one is called as short solenoid. One is called as long solenoid, one is called as long solenoid, another one is called as short solenoid. Okay, short solenoid. And what we are going to discuss will be the long solenoid, because the part of the syllabus is your long solenoid. You don't have to study the short solenoid, so we will not be talking about the short solenoid. But you need to remember what is meaning of long and what is meaning of short solenoids, right? So what is the meaning of long solenoid? Let's say if you have a solenoid like this, if you have a solenoid, so obviously it will have some length also. Let the length be L, and there would be radius of turns. Let that radius be R. Achha, remember, in solenoid, radius of each turn we take to be same. So radius of each turn is same, right? Radius of each turn is same, and length of the solenoid is L. If L is greater than that of R, I have written twice greater means if you can neglect radius of the turns in comparison to the length of the solenoid, then in that case this solenoid will be considered as long solenoid. Did you understand? If you have a solenoid whose radius can be neglected in comparison to its length, then in that case the solenoid would be called as long solenoid. And on the other hand, if you have a solenoid, if you on the other hand, if you have a solenoid whose radius cannot be neglected with respect to its length, then that solenoid would be called as short solenoid. For example, if we have a solenoid whose length is L and the radius of the turn is R, and here L and R cannot be neglected with respect to each other, if R is not negligible, not negligible in comparison to what? In comparison to, in comparison to L, then the solenoid would be called a short solenoid. But it's good that we just have to study about the long solenoid. We don't need to discuss short solenoid, as the syllabus only has long solenoid. We don't have short solenoid in your syllabus, right? Okay. Now we will be discussing about the long solenoid. Let us understand about the magnetic field pattern of the long solenoid, and then we will discuss how we're going to drive the magnetic field of a long solenoid. So first of all, try to understand the magnetic field pattern. I just told you, if you have a solenoid, and when you pass a current through the solenoid, let's say I passed a current through this solenoid, there exists a magnetic field till you pass the current through the solenoid. Why there will be a magnetic field? Try to understand. There will be a magnetic field because you have many circular turns in the solenoid. And you know that whenever a current is passed through a circular loop, we get a magnetic field in that loop, right? So if you get the magnetic field in the loop, in the same way you get the magnetic field in the solenoid, because it is a combination of circular turns. You have n number of circular turns, and each will have some magnetic field. Then if you'll add all these magnetic field, you will get the net magnetic field of the solenoid. That is why when a current is passed through a solenoid, you get a magnetic field, right? And how does this magnetic field appear? What will be the value of this magnetic field and how this magnetic field forms? Let us understand that. See, in the case of long solenoid, what we are supposed to assume, beta, you have to assume that the magnetic field will lie in the core of the solenoid, and in the core of the solenoid magnetic field have a particular direction, and it will be uniform if the solenoid is long solenoid, right? In the long solenoid, magnetic field remains uniform in the core of the solenoid. Why? I'll tell you. See, if you have a circular loop and if it has some radius r, you know that at the center we have a magnetic field which is equal to B is equal to mu naught I divided by 2r. See, how many turns do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say. So all four of these turns or circular loops will have magnetic field in the same direction because they carry current in the same direction. Let's say I pass a current like this. So current in this loop will be like this. Current in this loop will also be like this. Current in this loop will also be like this. Means every turn has that same direction of current. And because each turn is having the same direction of current, magnetic field will also be same for each turn, right? Magnetic field will be same in magnitude as well as direction for each individual turns. And if you add all this magnetic field, you will get the net magnetic field, right? And that net magnetic field will be constant throughout the solenoid because individual magnetic fields are constant. Hence, the net magnetic field will also be constant. Did you understand or not? Please respond. Means if you have a long solenoid, magnetic field in the core of the solenoid will be constant. Remember that. Okay, good. So this is uniform magnetic field. You need to remember the magnetic field that we get in a solenoid is always uniform. Uniform magnetic field. Good, Afroza. Uniform magnetic field. Outside the solenoid, there exists some magnetic field, but because the strength of that magnetic field is very feeble, very weak, that is why we don't consider that magnetic field, and we consider that outside the solenoid we have a magnetic field equal to 0. Outside the solenoid there is no magnetic field, although there exists magnetic field. In actual practice, I can simply say you that there exists some magnetic field outside the solenoid also, but it is so weak that we neglect that outside magnetic field in comparison to the magnetic field which lies inside the solenoid. So outside the solenoid, we will not consider any magnetic field. All the magnetic field will be considered in the core of the solenoid, right? In the core of the solenoid. Is it clear? Now, listen to me. If you know the fact about bar magnet, if you have heard about the bar magnet ever in your life, so you must have heard that in bar magnet, the magnetic field starts from north and goes to south outside the bar magnet, and it's inside the bar magnet it has the direction from south to north, if you have heard. Or in other words, if you don't remember this, I will simply tell you every bar magnet has two poles. Do you remember that? Every bar magnet has two poles, north pole as well as south pole. Similarly, every solenoid also has two poles, one north and another one south. Did you understand? Every solenoid has two poles like a bar magnet, one north and another one south. Clear? It's which end will have north polarity and which end will have south polarity. It depends on the direction of current in the solenoid. For example, try to understand. If you have solenoid like this, this is outer turn, means this turn is outside the screen. This turn is outside the screen. This turn is outside the screen. I'm only showing you the turn which is outside the screen. So how will you determine which end has north polarity and which end has south polarity? I'm telling you that Try to understand. Try holding this solenoid. Try holding this solenoid in such a way that your fingers are curled in the direction of current. I'll show you by switching on my video. Please try to understand. I'll tell you the direction, how you will determine the direction of north pole and south pole for a given solenoid. See, if you can see, please check this. If you think this is a solenoid, let's say this is a solenoid, you have to hold the solenoid in such a way that your fingers are curled in the direction of current, right? Current is going into the screen. Current is going this way. Current is going this way. According to the diagram that I have shown on the screen, current is going this way, right? So try to understand. Let's hold this solenoid such that my finger is curled in the direction of current. So this thumb, and yes, you have to hold it by your right hand. This thumb will give you the direction of north pole. Thumb will point in the direction of north pole. Please tell me, did you understand this or not? Assume that you are holding a solenoid in such a way that your fingers are curled in the direction of current, right? So that the direction of thumb will give you the direction of north pole. Is it clear to all? Please respond. Yes, understood. Good, Fatima. Okay, I think every one of you have understood this. So which end will have north polarity? Good. North polarity, this end will have north polarity, this will have south polarity. Okay, so now you know every solenoid has two poles, north poles and south pole. And north polarity, you can determine the north polarity by using this rule that just I have shown you. And remember, if you cut this solenoid, if you cut this solenoid half, then also it will be having two polarities. It doesn't mean if you cut some portion of the solenoid, it will become unipolar. Is not possible. Every solenoid will be dipolar, means it will have two poles, one north and another south. Doesn't matter how large or how small it is. If you'll cut down this solenoid to half of its length, then also it will have north pole and south pole in the same directions, right? So means like a bar magnet, what I was trying to tell you till now, like a bar magnet, solenoids also have two poles. And like a bar magnet, solenoids are dipolar. If you cut a bar magnet, every bar magnet, if you cut it in two pieces, then also it will have two poles, north pole and south pole. Further, you cut into two pieces, again you will observe two poles, north and south. Means every bar magnet is dipolar. In the same way, every solenoid is also a dipolar. It has two poles, north pole and south pole. Right? Now we are interested to find this value of magnetic field. Now I will repeat the whole thing, whatever I have said till now. First, a copper wire wound in helical shape forms a solenoid, and we will be discussing about the long solenoid. Long solenoid means a solenoid whose radius can be neglected in comparison to its length is known as long solenoid. And in the long solenoid, we only assume the magnetic field in the core of the solenoid, and that too, the magnetic field assumed is uniform and it has a particular direction. Every every solenoid behaves like a bar magnet in a way that solenoid also have two poles like a bar magnet, right? Now we are going to find the magnetic field. Now try out this derivation. We have to try understand this derivation of magnetic field due to a solenoid, and it is important for your 12th exam. The derivation that I'm going to do is important for your 12th exam. Let me take this as a solenoid, and let the length of this solenoid is L, and again the everything is same. This is the radius, and L is greater than that of R. Let N is number of turns per unit length. Turns per unit length means unit length has this number of turns. Once a turn, these turns, these circular turns, unit length has n number of circular turns. Where, let's say capital N is total number of turns, total number of turns in length L, length L. Can you tell me what will be relation between small n and capital N then? I told you L length contains total number of turns equal to capital N. So what will be the number of turns per unit length? What will be number of turns per unit length? Total turns is N. So how many turns will be there in a unit length? what will you do? L length contains total turns capital N. Of course, no, it should be capital N, right? So a small n can be written as capital N divided by L, means total turns divided by the length of the solenoid. This is the meaning of this small n. A small n is related to capital N by this. A small n means number of turns in unit length, and capital N means total number of turns. And this current is flowing like this, right? So if this current is flowing this way, I am assuming this current to be like this. This turn, try to understand this turn that I'm showing you here. This part of the turn is basically outside the screen. Try to understand this. It is placed on the screen of your laptop or mobile or iPad, whatever you are using right now. So this solenoid is placed on the screen, and this portion, which I have shown you by the blue line, is outside the screen, and this portion, which I'm showing you by black line here, is inside this, right? Is inside this screen. And this part is outside, and this part is inside. Means this is along plus Z axis, this is along minus Z axis. Means current is flowing this way. Current is flowing this way. Try to understand. Current is flowing this way. It is going this way. If I take one turn, the current is going this way. Means current is it is appeared to be coming out at this point, and then it is appeared to be going into the screen at this point, right? Let us find the direction value of magnetic field now, and for that I will be taking another diagram for this. I have shown you the direction of current. Again, see this. I have shown you the direction of current, correct? Now assume that you have cut the solenoid along its length. Assume that you have cut this solenoid along its length. If you cut the solenoid along its length, the diagram that will be observed is called as cross-sectional view. Did you understand what I'm saying? Cut this solenoid along its length. Take a knife, cut the solenoid along the length. Not like this. Not like this. ऐसे नहीं. Not like this. Cut this along the length like this. If you cut the solenoid along its length, you will get a view like this. I'm giving you this view now. Try to understand this view, and if you don't understand, please let me know. This view you will get. I'm taking one half because you have cut the solenoid along its length into two halves. I'm taking one half which was outside the screen. The half which was outside the screen, I'm taking that half. Try to understand. And this half had the turns like this. Okay, at this point, because current is flowing this way, current is flowing this way, and in the back part it would be going like this in the back part, which I'm not showing you here to keep the diagram clean, right? At this point, don't you think if I take the direction of current, it would be tangential, and that tangent at this point would be appear to be coming out of the screen, and at this point this tangent would be going into the screen. Please try to understand. If you take this circular turn and if you say, okay, this is the direction of current, don't you think at this point the current is looking like as if it is going outside, and at this point the direction of current would be tangentially inwards? So at this point you have a tangent pointing outside the screen, and at the lower point you have tangent pointing into the screen. That means if you draw the current, I can simply claim that the direction, okay, good, Afroza, I can say that the direction of current at this point is outward, and the direction of current at these points are inwards. This will be observed when you cut the solenoid into two halves and you take that half which was outside the screen. Now, as these turns are carrying current, obviously there will be magnetic field. And I told you the magnetic field that you have to draw is like this, because I told you the magnetic field would be uniform. I told you just now, the magnetic field that you have to take along the length would be uniform, right? So this is the magnetic field, and we have to find this value. Now, how we are going to find the value, try to understand, please. And wherever you have any doubt, please ask me. To find this magnetic field, I will be using Ampere's law. What I will do to apply the Ampere's law, first of all, I'll take a loop. I'll take a loop like this. I'm taking a loop like this. Try to understand. Sir, why are you taking a loop like this? Can we apply Ampere's law for a loop which is not circular? Yes, of course, we can apply Ampere's law for a loop which is not circular, because I told you Ampere's law is valid for a loop of any shape. We were using the circular loop for a particular reason to keep the magnetic field constant. Then, sir, why are you not using this in this particular case? The reason is, okay, if you take a circular loop in this case, try to understand. If you take a circular loop in this case, if you take the circular loop, what will happen? Because magnetic field is like this, right? Magnetic field is like this. If you take the tangent at any point, let's say I took a tangent at this point, I took a tangent at this point, don't you think at every point the angle is changing? What angle? The angle between the magnetic field and the dl. The angle between magnetic field and the dl will change or not? Please try to understand this. Beta, if you want, I'll repeat this again. See, if I take circular loop, I told you magnetic field is in this direction. Now let us take a element dl. If we'll take dl will be tangential and magnetic field is in this direction. We will have some angle here. Similarly, if I take tangential element at this point, let us say I took a tangential element at this point, dl, and this will also make some angle with the magnetic field. Are these two angles same or different? What do you say? The angle at this point, let me call this point as A and this point as B. These two angles are same or different, beta? Obviously different. And what you have studied, I'm try to understand what you have studied. You have studied BDL cos theta is equal to mu naught I. If this angle continues to change, this cos theta will become variable. DL is variable, cos theta is also variable. I will not be able to integrate this. Let me name this loop PQRS. Now, how will I find the total magnetic field or line integral of magnetic field in this loop also? So see, total line integral of magnetic field over the closed loop PQRS. Acha, beta, you didn't ask me, but that loop will also have, yes, good. Joanna, very good. I was about to ask you the same doubt, but you have asked, so I'll let you understand. See, yes, you are right, because we are having the direction of magnetic field only in one direction, that is from left to right. But if I take this loop PQRS and if I start from P, in this case, I have angle between this PQ and magnetic field to be 0 here. But when I reach here, the angle becomes 90 degree, and this will remain 90 degree till Q2R. When I reach here, the angle will become 180 degree. When I reach here, the angle will become 90 degree. But for me, solving this is easier. Why? Because this angle is changing only at 4 points. But in the case of circular loop, the angle was changing at every point. Try to understand. The angle was different here. The angle was different here. The angle was different here. At every point of the circular loop, angle was different. So you were supposed to integrate that. But here we don't want to integrate. We can add these 4 quantities differently. We will find the line integral of PQ individually, QR individually, RS individually, and SP individually, and we will add them up. And because we are only having 4 parts, so we can add them easily. But on the circular loop, there will be infinite number of points, and that cannot be added without integration. Is it clear, Joanna? Did you understand? Okay, good. So that is why what we will be writing here, try to understand. We will write this B dot dl over the whole closed loop as B dot dl over this PQ plus B dot dl over this QR plus B dot dl over this RS plus B dot dl over this SP, right? What we have done, we have break this line integral for the whole loop as the sum of individual segment of this loop. And because we only have 4 segments, we can add them up easily. Now I'll be finding this integral one by one. I will be finding this integral one by one. I will first integrate this for PQ, then for QR and so on. So let us understand one by one, and then I'll add them all. I will add them up, right? But for that, first we'll find the integral for individual segments. So starting from PQ, the line integral of BDL for PQ Beta, if you see this PQ, I am going from P to Q, and magnetic field is also in the same direction. So what will be the value of theta here, beta? What do you think the theta will be, the value of theta here? BDL, what is the angle? This is the direction of magnetic field, and length has been taken from P to Q. Good. So this would be cos 0, and this can be simply written as, let's say, the loop that I have taken has a total length of L, let's say. So we can simply write this as B multiplied by L, because B is constant. B is constant inside the solenoid. So I can keep this out of the integral. I can take it out of the integration, and I will integrate dl. Cos 0 is 1. So if I'll integrate the dl, I'll get this length. So hence this will become B into L. First, I have got the integral. Now I am going from Q to P. Try to understand. B dot dl from Q to P for this segment of the loop, which is the segment is Q to R. Sorry, not P. My mistake. Q to R. What will you write here? B dl. What is the angle? You are going from Q to R. You have started from Q. You are going to R. What is the angle? Magnetic field is still towards right. Good, Joanna. The angle is cos of 90. Cos of 90 is 0. Hence, it will become 0. Moving on for the next segment. And that segment, if you look on the segment that RS is outside the solenoid, please check B dot dl for RS. RS is lying outside the solenoid. Can you tell me what is the value of magnetic field outside the solenoid? What did I tell you about the magnetic field outside the solenoid? Will it be 0 or not? Very good. It will be 0, right? So it will become 0. It will become 0. It will become 0. Why? Since magnetic field outside is equal to 0, hence it becomes 0. Last but not the least, I am going from S to P. B dot dl SP. As you are going from S to P, you are going this way. Magnetic field lines is still towards right. ठीक है? Means angle is still 90 degree, and cos 90 will become equal to 0. Is it clear? So if now we add all these four integrals, I'll get the net value. So finally I can write BDL over the whole loop of PQRS, and after integrating the whole, what we have got is mu naught. No, sorry. This whole we have got this as B into L, right? This we have got Bn, because 3 of the integral has become 0. Integral from Q to R is 0, R to S is 0, S to P is 0. Means if you'll integrate line, if you'll take the line integral of B and L over this whole PQRS, you will be getting B into L. Is it clear till here? I hope it is understood. Now, moving on. As by Ampere's law, we know that line integral of B dl over the whole loop is equal to mu naught I. Okay, moving on. As by Ampere's law, we know that B dl is equal to mu naught I. Mu naught I. I means what? I doesn't means current in one turn. I means net current. And from where? This net current from where? Through one turn or through the whole loop? So remember, through the whole loop, right? Through this whole loop. This net current means the current which is flowing through the whole loop. For instance, if you look on this carefully, this turn carries a current of I. This turn also carries a current of I. And if you look on this diagram, how many turns this loop is containing? So this loop is containing 2 turns, right? And both the turns are having current I and I. Means I can simply say that in this particular case, in this particular example, I can say the net current through this loop is equal to 2I or not. Tell me yes or no. Yes, of course. We have a total current of 2I. But because turns are very close to each other, so although I have drawn this diagram this way, it doesn't mean that it will only have it will only have 2 turns. It can have any number of turns, right? So first of all, try to understand what will be the net current. I net through 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 loop PQRS would be equal to current through one loop, which is I, multiplied by total number of loops in the length L. Tell me whether you understood this step or not. I is the current of one loop. And what would be the total number of turns in a given length? So if this length is L, I just told you a small n is number of turns per unit length. In unit length, we have this much of turn. So what would be the total number of turns in a length L? So it would be simply n into L or not. Say if I am saying 1 meter contains 20 turns. So what would be number of turns in 10 meter? How will you find the number of turns in 10 meter? So in 10 meter, you will simply multiply 20 multiplied by 10. That will be the total number of turns. Similarly, unit length contains this much of turn. So what will be the total number of turns in a length L? So that will be equal to n into L. And one turn contains a current of I. So how much will be the current in through the whole turns that is inside the loop? So that will be equal to current in one turn multiplied by the total current. Please tell me, did you understand this or not? This is the important part of this derivation. You have to understand this, please. So now we can simply write BL, which we have got by the line integral. This must be equal to mu naught multiplied by the total current. So BL is equal to mu naught into this current, which is net current, which is what? Which is I into N into L. Here L and L will cancel out. So the magnetic field that you will get will be mu naught N into I. This is the formula for magnetic field inside the solenoid. And if you look on this formula depends on three parameters. One is mu naught, which is permeability. N is the number of turns per unit length, and I is the value of current. It is independent of the length of the solenoid. Try to understand. For a long solenoid, remember this. For a long solenoid, if you have a long solenoid, magnetic field of solenoid is independent of length, provided you have a long solenoid. So we have now understood the concept of solenoid, and this is simply the arrangement which is used to produce temporary magnetic field, and it is used to magnetize iron piece temporarily, right? So now we know the magnetic field or the formula of the magnetic field, and it is B is equal to mu naught N into I, where a small n is the number of turns per unit length. Okay, so now we are in position to solve few of the questions, because if you'll get to drive the formula for the solenoid, then you will also get a question along with it. Okay, so you need to understand two or three questions based on this. I'm taking the first very simplest question. I'm taking very simple question. I will not write the statement of this question. I'm just taking a very simple question. Let's say I have a solenoid, and that solenoid has a total turns of equal to 100. Let's say it has total turns is equal to 500 turns. This is the total number of turns. Wherever I write capital N, it will mean total number of turns. And the current flowing in the solenoid is, let's say I'm not taking the current. I'll reform this question. I'm saying we have a solenoid like this, which number of turns is given. We have a battery connected to it. Battery has a voltage of, let's say, 20 volts. It has a voltage of 20 volts, and resistance of resistance of solenoid equal to 5 ohm. This is the resistance of the solenoid. Total number of turns is given, resistance of the solenoid given, battery is given, the voltage of the battery is given, and I'm giving you one more thing, which is length of solenoid. Length of solenoid is equal to 0.5 meter. Mind you, if you don't have length in meters, you will convert it into meters. If you don't have length in meter, you will convert it into SI unit. Then you will get the magnetic field in Tesla, which is the SI unit, right? So you need to convert length into meter, which is the SI unit always. Then only you will get the answer in Tesla. Okay, so this is the length of the solenoid. I've given you the resistance. I've given you the voltage of the cell which is connected across the solenoid. I've given you the total number of turns. Now what I'm asking is simple. You have to find out the magnetic field. BS stands for magnetic field. Please try to understand. The formula that we have for magnetic field is mu naught n into I. This is the formula for magnetic field. And you are aware of this because we have just derived this result. Now, what we need to have. Okay, Johanna, I am also unaware of the answer because I have given you data just now. It is a random data that I have just given. So I will also have to solve to check the answer for this, right? So I'm solving it now. Please check whether our answers match or not. We know the value of mu naught that we'll put later on. What is this a small n? A small n is number of turns per unit length. So what will it be? I just told you a small n can be written as capital N divided by length. And what is the value of this capital N? It is 500 and length is 0.5. So what will get the value of a small n is 500 divided by 0.5. If you divide the two, how much you are getting? 500 divided by 0.5. You will be getting it as 1000 if I'm not wrong. 1000 turns per meter. This is your number of turns per unit length. Clear? Now, what will be the value of current? So you need to use a basic formula which is Ohm's law. Current is nothing but V divided by R. I have given you the voltage of cell which is 20. I have given you resistance of the solenoid because you want the current in solenoid, of course. So this will be 20 divided by 5, which will be equal to obviously how much? It would be 4 ampere. So you got the value of current. You got the value of number of turns per unit length. Now substitute all the values in this. What will you write for mu naught? Mu naught is nothing but 4 pi into 10 to the power minus 7. So it will be written as 4 pi. I will write it as 3.14 into 10 to the power minus 7 multiplied by turns, which is 10 to the power 3 multiplied by current, which is 4. I hope you are getting it. So if I multiply this, I'll get 16 multiplied by 3.14. Magnetic field would be 50.24, and this is minus 7. This is 10 to the power 3 into 10 to the power minus 4 Tesla. This is your magnetic field. I'm giving you the another question now, and we will solve it because time is running and we have come to the end of the class. We don't have enough time left. So I'll be solving this question. First, you try to understand the question. Question simply says a copper wire having a resistance of 0.01 ohm per meter is used to wind a 400 ton solenoid of radius 1 centimeter. Try to understand. We have a copper wire. I'm writing this question. Please copy it fast. A copper wire. See, the question is very simple. We are having a copper wire. Obviously, solenoid is made up of copper wire. We have a copper wire whose resistance per unit length is 0.1 meter. And with the help of this copper wire, we wound a solenoid of 400 tons and whose radius is 1 centimeter and length is 20 centimeter. Because means we have a solenoid. See, we have a solenoid. Let me draw it properly. We have solenoid whose radius is given to us, whose length is given to us. Length is equal to how much? That is equal to 20 centimeter and radius is equal to 1 centimeter. So I will take the data first. I will write all the data first and try to understand the whole data. If I tell you this is the length of the solenoid, right? Better, did you understand? This is length of the solenoid, but not the length of the copper wire. Try to understand this. If I ask you what would be the length of the copper wire, which is used to wound this solenoid, length of copper wire used here, what will be the length? Can you tell me what would be its length? How much of the length of copper wire must have been used to form a solenoid whose length is 20 and radius is 1 centimeter. So see, each turn of the solenoid is a circle, right? And to form a circle, how much is the length of the wire you need? You need a length equal to 2 pi r, which is the circumference of the circle, right? So this will be the length required to form one circular turn. So what would be the length required to form 400 turns? So I'll just multiply it by 400. You are not getting what I'm saying. Did you understand? See, this is length of the solenoid, not the length of the wire used. Why are you trying to find out the length of the wire? Because we need to find the resistance. And we can find the resistance only if we can find the length. So the total length that we have got is 2 pi r into 400, means the total wire used is 2 pi multiplied by radius is 1 centimeter. So I just told you write everything into meters. So I can write it as 1 into 10 to the power minus 2 into 400. Is it clear? This is the length of the wire. So what will be the resistance? Resistance is equal to what? This is length, and unit length has 0.1 ohm per meter. So what will be the resistance of this length? So that will be 2 pi into 10 to the power minus 2 multiplied by 400 multiplied by 0.1 ohm. Okay, so if I solve this, I'll get the total. Okay, if I solve this, I'll get the total resistance, and that total resistance would be equal to nothing, but it will be simply 8 pi into 10 to the power minus 2, I guess. This will be the total resistance. Achha, I made some mistake or what? Okay, right. So this will be not 10 to the minus 1, 2. This will be 10 to the minus 1. Is it correct? Just check it. 2 pi, this 100 wala power, this 100 will get cancelled out. So this will become 8 pi multiplied by 0.1, which I have written it as 10 to the power minus 1. This we have got the total resistance. Once I have got the total resistance, I can write the value of current. Now, second point, a small n. What is this a small n? Number of turns per unit length. Total turn is how much? 400. What is the total length? It is 0.2, or you can write it as 20 into 10 to the power minus 2. Whichever way you want to write, you can. This will become 2000 turns per meter. So we have got a small n, we have got resistance. So now we are in position to do the final step. What we were supposed to do is we have to find the value of voltage. Can we write this current also as voltage divided by resistance? You must be aware of this. Current is equal to voltage divided by resistance. Is it correct? Magnetic field that we need is 10 to the power minus 2 Tesla, which is required. Mu naught is what? Mu naught is 4 pi into 10 to the power minus 7. Number of turns per unit length, you have got it as 2000 multiplied by E divided by resistance. Resistance, you have got 8 pi into 10 to the power minus 1. Can you find this E from this data now? E will be nothing but E will be equal to 4 pi, 8 pi, this will become 2. Obviously, you can find this E. E will be equal to 2 into 10 to the power minus 1 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 2 divided by 2000 into 10 to the power minus 7. So whatever you get, the answer from this will be your final result. So this is how we will solve these kind of questions.